What if trying harder in your faith is the reason for why you are still stuck? Now, this seems to be a common dilemma for many people. It definitely was for myself. It's been for many of my clients, and it's something that I'm still seeing a lot today. I remember when I first came to faith, and the simplicity of the gospel was so beautiful. For the first 6 months of my faith, I wasn't part of any church. It was just me at home. I had a Bible. A friend of mine had given me, I think it was a Darling Check CD. Yeah, CD back then. And I would wake up 2 to 3 hours before I had to go to work, and I would just sing, I would read the scriptures, and I would get to know this Jesus guy. And it was one of the most beautiful times in my journey. And during that time, things were happening effortlessly. I was already seeing healings, I was seeing miracles, I was being invited to speak at friends' home groups, and then I was even being invited to speak at youth groups. And so all this stuff was happening, but it was coming out of just simply being with him. Like I said, I wasn't part of any church at this time. It was just me alone getting to know this Jesus guy. And so for those first 6 months, it was beautiful. And I realized, and I had a great foundation for how simple the gospel truly is. After those 6 months, I then joined a local church, and it was great because people were putting language to my experiences, and it was great to be in community with others who were walking on the same journey. It was just very enjoyable, very refreshing. Unfortunately, one of the things that happen, and what often happens within an institutional space or framework, is that you begin to absorb mindsets, thinkings, even formulas that can then take over the simplicity of the gospel. So for myself, it was like my innocence was robbed. And so what was just simple fellowship, being with the Father, was now hijacked by formulas. And so instead of just this wake up, be with him, it was now 3 steps to deeper intimacy, and 5 ways to better pray, and 7 ways to a better life with God, and all this stuff. The simplicity of the gospel and of fellowship with him was now being taken over by formulas, by frameworks, by structures. And I'm not against those things, but what it did for me is that it put me in a place of performance, because ultimately it was religion underneath it. And so because of that performance, instead of me just being loved by my good Father, I now felt like I had to be somebody or do certain things in order to be somebody in him. And so now it became about performance. And because you can never succeed at performance, you will always fall into moments of condemnation, to frustration, and to even burnout. And that's what happened to me. And so the simplicity of just being loved by him, of just being childlike, was now taken over by the sophistication of, you've got to be a man of God and run the ministries and be this Christian guy who does all this Christian stuff. And ultimately it just ruined me in many ways. And so what I realized, what I learned from that, is that the gospel is incredibly simple. We are the ones who make it difficult. And what's hard is that a lot of it is wrapped in Christian language. It's wrapped in the name of Jesus. And so it makes it very hard to see, because it's often hidden, or it's unrecognizable to us because it's wrapped in Bible language. It's wrapped in Jesus language. And so because of that, you'll hear a lot of the advice today in Christianity when somebody is feeling stuck or they're feeling frustrated. And many people, they have a genuine heart for God. Like they genuinely, truly want to grow more in their Father. But there is these things that get in the way, and that's a whole other conversation. But often the advice within Christianity is, well, you just got to read more, you got to pray more, you got to fast more, you got to do more ministry stuff, you got to do. And it ends up just ruining people. And that was my experience. And so I hit burnout. And in that, what Jesus asked me was, do you want to continue living in the hard and heavy? Or would you like to come back and live in the light and easy? And so I'd realized I completely forgotten. I had walked away from my first love, so to speak, and I had forgotten the simplicity of just being his child who is loved, and I'd given into the complexity of what we would call Christianity in many ways. And so I had to leave all that behind. But I realized he was always inviting me to live in his light and easy yoke and burden, and not for us just to visit it from time to time, but for you and I to actually live there. And so I just wanted to share 3 quick pieces of advice for anybody else who may be in the same position where, and maybe you're like me, you have been in this season of just innocence, of simplicity. Now you've stepped into a new season and complexity is coming the way. Or maybe you're somebody, you genuinely want to grow in God, but you feel like you've hit a wall, or things aren't working, or you're just stuck in this do mentality. Then hopefully these 3 pieces of advice will help you. So the first one I would say is to slow down. What I've often found is that Jesus is in the slow. Now, the patterns of this world have trained us in a totally different way. The patterns of this world are very much that hustle, grind, instant gratification, microwave mentality, put it on hire purchase, afterpay, pay later, get it now type thing. All this culture has trained us to a certain rhythm. And that rhythm is often quick, it's often fast, it's often go, now. But the rhythm of the kingdom, I've found, is very different. And many times it's much slower. And so, like I said, I've often found that Jesus is in the slow. And so in my life and my journey, there's so many times where in this hustle grind mentality, I've tried to force an answer, or I've tried to force a solution, or it's like I've been very tends to try and receive clarity on a vision or something that, I'm seeking from God, and it's like I'm trying to pound the door to get it, and it's always been difficult. It's like it's been hard to get. But when I've stepped back, so to speak, and I've taken time to slow down and just to be with him, many times the penny drops. And I can tell you countless times that it's happened, not just for me, but also for clients as well. I like to teach this open hand idea that when you are trying to force something or strive for something, it's like a closed fist. But you can't catch your idea. You can't catch your solution. You can't catch your blessing. You can't catch whatever it is through a closed fist. You need an open hand. And so the way to open your hand is to slow down, let go, and just be with him. And so that's why with an open hand, you can now catch that. And so many times I've seen that when I've stepped out of the rhythm of this world and even the rhythm that Christianity has absorbed, and when I've stepped in just to being his son, the rhythm of the kingdom, which is often much slower, many times the penny drops, boom, and I have my answer. And so that'd be the first one, is to slow down. I once heard a quote from, I can't remember his name, but he said, the enemy of spiritual growth is hurry. So it's eliminating hurry. In fact, there's a great book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. Definitely recommend it. I think it's so timely for our day and age, this era. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. But anyway, slowing down is one of the most effective and powerful things you can do. And I know it sounds so counter-logical. It sounds counterintuitive. And sure, there are times when you have to be decisive and quick. I'm not speaking against that. Hear what I'm saying. Is that slowing down, the rhythm of the kingdom, Jesus is often in the slow. And so some of the ways that I like to do that is that first thing in the morning, I like to go outside and I spend at least 10, 15 minutes in stillness. So I'll get out there, I'll ground my feet, get my feet to the ground, get my body just connected with the earth, not in the weird way, I'm not tree hugger style, but just being grounded and starting my day in stillness and peace with my good Father. So right from my day, even though I'm just waking up out of stillness, I'm also intentionally with my soul and my conscience saying, Father, I'm going to be in stillness and I'm going to walk slowly with you throughout this day. And that's just one of the ways that I like to start my day. So you might like to do that, or you can take time throughout your day just to be still. Another way is you can even drive slower. So drive slower on the speed limit. In fact, I'll often tell people, have a go at driving, 2, 3, 4, 5 times kilometers slower and watch what happens to your soul, because we've been wired in such a way. And sure, there are speed limits that you want to keep up to. You don't want to be way back. But watch what your soul reacts, because it's just so ingrained, the patterns of this world, this certain speed and rhythm that is very opposite to the rhythm of the kingdom. So that's another way. Or maybe some of you right now, you're watching this video or you're listening to this podcast and you might have me on 1.5 times speed or 2 times speed. And so I would say to you, change it to 1 time speed, like slow down. So again, these are just intentional ways to govern your soul back into the rhythm of the kingdom that is often slow, and Jesus is often in the slow. So that's the first one, slow down. The second one, simplicity. The gospel is incredibly simple. We have made it complex, and we've made it complex for so many reasons. And I'm reminded of what Paul says to the Corinthians, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. He says, I'm concerned for you that somehow like Eve was deceived by Satan, so also you have been deceived from the simplicity that is in Christ. So the gospel is incredibly simple. In fact, it's so simple that Jesus said even a child can understand it. In fact, he went another step and said, unless you become like a child, you'll not inherit the kingdom. So the gospel is simple. You and I make it complicated. And I am fearful, and I've experienced and seen that a lot of our Christianity today has absorbed the patterns of this world. We've absorbed this hustle mentality. We've absorbed complexity in the name of Jesus, and it's made things far more difficult than it needs to be. An example for this recently was in 2022. So the mandates kicked in, we lost all our income, and we had our third child about to arrive. And so what this did is that part of the story, this exposed that Lee did not believe that God would be his provider. So I could preach a good message about it. I could get on a pulpit, I could come on a microphone like this, and I could talk an eloquent message and make you all go wow and inspire you. But when rubber met the road, it exposed that Lee did not truly believe that God could be his provider or wanted to be his provider. And so it exposed a whole lot of junk in my trunk, so to speak. And so because of that deep-seated belief, what that led to was that Lee needed to be in control of provision. So I've always had my own business, or I'm doing something on my own, because I always felt like it was on me to make sure provision happened. And so we've lost all our income, about to have a third child. You can imagine the anxiety, the stress, the pressure that I gained from that. And so I'm in this whirlwind, this chaos, this fear, this anxiety. And then one day I'm reading the scriptures, and Jesus, it's that part where Jesus says, look at the birds of the sky. They neither sow nor reap nor store up in their barns, yet your good Father takes care of them. How much more will he take care of you? And for whatever reason, that revelation penetrated my heart in such a way that it was like I could breathe after being stuck underwater or something. Because when you look at all financial advice today, it's all sow, reap, save. Like a lot of our financial advice is wrapped around that. And yet Jesus says the birds do none of those, and he still takes care of them. How much more will he take care of you? And so the simplicity of the gospel, of that simple truth, it's like it peeled away all the scales of complexity that I'd built up. And it was like I could breathe life. And the simplicity of that promise was like, wow, he is my provider and he wants to be my provider. Lee doesn't have to be the provider. Now, I'm not saying be careless or lazy. You hear what I'm saying is that I realize I'm no longer the source. He is my source. And so what happened is that from that time, my wife and I, we said to the Father, all right, we give you permission to be our provision. We made that prayer together. It was like drawing a line in the sand. 2 weeks after we made that prayer, I get a random message from somebody on Instagram, never met her, still haven't met her to this day. And she says, hi Lee, I've been praying for you. I felt like God wanted me to bless you. And she gave us $2,000. Now that never happened in my life. And it's happened multiple times since then. Again, fast forward 3 years, here we are. We've learned to live in that provision. But it all started from the simplicity of the gospel. I had all this complex thinking around just how God interacts, provision, all that with me. And it was the simplicity of, hey, look at the birds. How much more you? And so the simplicity of the gospel. So maybe for you, you have this belief or idea that you have to do certain things in order to feel close to God. But I would say to you, you're as close to him as you're ever going to be right now because you're one spirit with him, 1 Corinthians 6. And so you're already close with him, but it's our complexities that get in the way and create this illusion of distance when actually you're already in oneness with him. And he promised he'll never leave you. So he's always there. So simplicity is the second one I would say, coming back to the simplicity of the gospel. It is so simple, but it's us who make it difficult. Thirdly and finally, your circle. So this is the people that you're around, the people that you're with. So like I shared before, the first 6 months was just me, Jesus, scriptures alone in my room. Wow, simplicity, beautiful, experiencing the fruit of it. Join the local church, embrace some of the frameworks of thinking that is within that, not against the people. The thinking's a bit different, but that thinking then infected my thinking, and that's what brought in complexity. And so long story short, after a few years there, I had to peel away. I had to step away from the institutional space and setting because a lot of it was just ultimately, it was hard. It was difficult. I felt like it was just such an obligation to be a Christian, and it was just very hard. But I loved him through it all. And so I became disillusioned with the frameworks of religion of Christianity, never the Father. And so I had to peel away from that. And in many ways, I still feel like I'm peeling back a lot of my religious thinking, or a lot of that religious thinking anyway. But I had to peel away from that. And so now, for the last several years, we've been walking in community with people who understand this reality of the simplicity and the light and easy yoke and burden that Jesus is always inviting us into. And so we've been on that journey with like-minded people, and it is so awesome just to be with me. And when I say awesome, I mean it in its truest sense, like awesome. It is so good to walk with people who will walk with you through these just realities, even the shift from complexity to simplicity, from religion to sonship. Like that whole shift can be very disorienting. It can be very traumatic at times because you're detaching a whole lot of where you've placed your identity. And so that shift and having people, a circle that you can walk with, has been so, so valuable. A lot of our Christianity today has taught this idea and believed this idea that the Christian journey has to be hard. And so it has to be a struggle, and suffering is a must. And I understand, I get where a lot of that comes from. I'm finding the total opposite, that when Jesus said we can live in his light and easy yoke and burden, he truly meant it. Now that does not mean we never have hardship. I can tell you my stories of hardship, no problem. Jesus said in this world you will have difficulty, but be of good cheer, for I've overcome the world. So his light and easy yoke and burden is not an denying or an ignoring of hardship. Rather, it's the ability to overcome them with good cheer. And so that's what we're finding, that the light and easy yoke and burden that Jesus has said we can live in is a very real thing. But when so much of our Christianity is hammering this other way of struggle, pain, hard hustle, just like the patterns of this world, and when it's wrapped in Christian language, it can be very hard to recognize and then detach from. So finding a circle of people who can help you to live in the simplicity of the truth of just being the beloved of the Father and walking that out can be incredibly effective. So again, first one, slow down. Jesus is in the slow, and the rhythm of the kingdom is very different from the rhythm of this world, and it's often slower. Number two, simplicity, the simplicity of the gospel. It is much simpler than we've made it be. It's you and I, it's religion that makes it complicated. Thirdly and finally, circle, find your people. So for right now, you may have nobody around you, so you're online. You may be reading some guy's blog in Denmark, or somebody's podcast that you subscribe to from America, or maybe my videos here, whatever. But find your circle. And so, like I said, the journey in Christianity does not have to be hard and heavy. The light and easy yoke and burden that Jesus speaks about is a very real thing, and he's invited us all to live in that reality. And so that's the invitation. So I'm going to leave you with a question. The first one is, what is one area in your life where effort has replaced intimacy, where formulas have replaced fellowship, or where complexity has replaced simplicity? So that's the question. What is one area in your life where effort has replaced intimacy? And I'll leave you with this thought. God is not asking for hustle. He's inviting you to ease and flow with him. And so if you do want support or help with this, there are two options. I have a Snuggle Strategy mini course, which teaches you how to live in true rest and lasting peace with your good Father. I also offer one-on-one coaching, so if that's something you want to chat about, feel free to click the links below for either the mini course or coaching. We can chat from there. But other than that, your good Father has always intended for you and I to live in his promised rest, and it's a reality that we can all live in, and it's simpler than we think, and God is better than we think. Our challenge is just believing it. So bless you.